All right, Miami Dolphins fans, you almost have to laugh at what you saw today against the Denver Broncos. This was one of the biggest blowouts in NFL history. Look, we use hyperbole a lot. We see it all the time in the media. Everything's great, spectacular, transcendent. We've never seen this before. Well, guess what, Dolphins fans? This, in my opinion, was the most dominant game we've ever seen in modern NFL history. And we're going to talk about it a little bit more today. 70-20 victory for the Dolphins. Absolutely incredible.
Yeah, Nick, and Dolphins fans, I'm going to ask you an extremely hard question. Probably the hardest question you'll have all season, because who was the MVP of today's game? There's probably like 7 guys on the field that you could put looking at the box score that had, stellar days, monumental days, career days that you can put on your shoulder and say, look, that was a great game for me. Like 5, 6 of those guys easy. So just pick someone. There's where you throw a dart, you'll hit someone. Let us know in the comments below who is your MVP of today's game. But Nick, let's get into the Dolphins.
Yeah, let's go ahead and throw up the Dolphins offensive box score and let's go through this just because this is absolutely absurdly ridiculous. You have A-Chain coming out party, 200 yards, 11 yards per carry, all kinds of big plays, 2 rushing touchdowns. Mostert 13 for 82, 3 scores. Brooks got into the game late, did a lot of good stuff as well. But if you look at Tua's numbers, 23 of 26, 309, 4 scores, and even Mike White gets in, has a long touchdown, of course, to Chosen. And then Tyreek Hill's numbers, 9 catches, $157. Mostert had a receiving touchdown. A-Chain added 2 as well. I don't know where to start. I want to put some historical context on this. The record for points scored in a regular season game was 72. The Dolphins would have broken that today. They decided to kneel it down late instead of kicking a field goal. They essentially, in all reality, have the record for most points scored in a game. The record, if you include postseason, it's 73. The Washington Redskins against the Chicago Bears, I believe, in the 1943 NFL title game, won 73-0. So again, to put some context on this, this is literally, in terms of points scored, the greatest offensive performance in NFL history. But here's where it gets more ridiculous. I obviously brought up the 73-0 game was from the 1940s. The other record for the regular season was 72 points. That happened in the 1960s, the early 60s. So again, that's old school football. It was a different game, right? There was no really complex coverages. There wasn't really a lot of things defenses could come up with creativity wise. There wasn't all these complex zones and different schemes. Basically, you played man on man. If the other guy had receivers that you couldn't cover, they'd score a million points on you. Obviously, that's not the case in today's modern NFL. The Denver Broncos had, or supposedly had, a relatively decent pass defense. Wouldn't have known it today, obviously. And it just, the numbers here, this almost looks like 2001 Miami Hurricanes if they played like Colorado's School of Mines. Like, it was like that kind of mismatch. This does not happen in professional football. This game doesn't make any sense in terms of how we think the NFL should be played, where literally every single game is essentially close. These numbers are absolutely ridiculous. 23 of 26. If you go 23 of 26 in a game, you're throwing nothing but easy completions, a lot of 4 or 5 yard throws. Not the case here. A lot of big plays, over 300 yards of the air through 2. And of course, Mike White added a bunch as well. They ran the ball, gashed him all day. It's just, I'm almost at a loss for words for how good the Miami Dolphins offense is. And whatever you want to say about the Denver Broncos, they're not a great team, obviously, but this is NFL football. This doesn't happen in NFL football, right? This is just absolutely absurd what we're seeing from Miami. And Miles, let me throw it over you now. What are your thoughts? I think I'm almost still trying to figure out where this sits historically. I think we honestly just witnessed the greatest offensive game in NFL history.
Yeah, Nick, let's take a look at some of the big things. 4 plays over 50 yards. Four plays here. And I think there might have been more because I think A-Chain had a pair over 50 yards himself. I just can't see it here on the box score. I think that this was just truly something insane. A-Chain, 4 touchdowns on his own, 2 receiving, 2 rushing. This guy looks like an absolute weapon in this Miami offense. Mostert, you look at the running backs, Nick. Mostert, 82 yards, Brooks, 66 yards. You'd be like, that's a pretty respectable day for your first and second string running backs to have. You feel like, okay, we ran the ball pretty well, but you forget the entire fact that your actual starting running back of the day ran it for 200 plus yards. So this is a huge, huge ground game by them. And you think, okay, let's look at that. We had 300 plus yards on the ground. We did really good. We must have not thrown the ball at all. Well, we had over almost 400 yards in the air. This game is actually ludicrous to look at. 10 total touchdowns. It was a shellacking. I think the Denver Broncos are going to go home. Sean Payton's going to think about retirement and just say, how can I possibly keep up with things if this is the new NFL, and that's exactly what this is. He is the coach of the future. He is showing why. And this team, the way they've constructed it, is a thing of beauty.
And again, just to put a few more points on this, because I'm going to go back to the historical element of this to understand how great we just witnessed. And look, one more stat from this game to focus on: 726 total yards from scrimmage from the Miami Dolphins. That's incredible for 2 games. That's a really nice 8-quarter stretch, let alone 4 quarters. In reality, they stopped playing the last half of the 4th quarter. Otherwise, they would have even more. But if you go back to the highest scoring games in NFL history, the 43 game, the Bears beat the Redskins that game 73-0. I think we have got it backwards the first time. They picked off the Redskins quarterback 6 times. Right, Sammy Boss. So again, a lot of turnovers. If you go back to 72 points, the highest scoring regular season game, there was 2 special teams touchdowns and there was a defensive touchdown to help them get to 72. Right, so that was just a crazy game where a lot of things went their way to get to 70 points. This was pretty much all offense. I mean, the Broncos did have 3 turnovers, but the majority of it was just offensive execution and overwhelming force. This was unbelievable what we just saw. And how about this? Where do you see Jalen Waddle on the stat sheet, Miles?
He was too far down.
He was hurt. They scored 70 points without their second best wide receiver. This is unbelievable. What we're seeing from McDaniel and Tua in this entire offense, it's historically great. And I think fans of football and certainly fans of the Dolphins should really appreciate this.
One last thing, and I know you'll appreciate this, Nick. I think the key of the day, kept Tua clean. No sacks by the offensive line. Armstead's back. They look really good. And you, as our offensive line expert, check out some of our breakdowns. This is really impressive.